Hello, ADC. Doesn't it feel to be welcome home? How does it feel to be back in the homeland? Yeah, I've been very much looking forward to coming home, seeing you all, and yeah. So this talk, I think, started out for me. It basically is kind of serving to me as a reminder for how I want to go about building tools. Because being an engineer, there's a lot of cool tech that we can build and lots of fun stuff. But at the end of the day, we're building stuff for people. So this is my reminder to myself, a little time capsule for what's been effective, what I've seen to be effective, and so I can continue doing this sort of work. Got another intro slide. Yeah, okay, great. So just a quick roundup for me. I'm the software engineer at Make It. I kind of joined the company a few years ago and my job looked like this. But because we're a startup now, obviously my job looks more like this. But I love it, it's amazing. I graduated from Queen Mary a few years ago. I know I've seen lots of volunteers from representing Queen Mary, so any Queen Mary people in the crowd, like, represent. But yeah, so just a quick shout out. I just wanted to shout out ADC in general for like the amazing work for the conference, making it so inclusive and accessible. My first ADC was actually here in 2019 when it moved from CodeNode, and that was just like the very start of my journey, and I was like just getting introduced. So I wanted to shout out like the community in general, ADC. Josh Hodge, people making content online, Jatin, just the whole community of ADC, like very much like changed the trajectory of like what I've been doing with my life. So just wanted to like shout out everyone involved with that. But yeah, without further ado, prototyping. So there is like, it's like very technical language around prototyping that does exist, although we'll use the idea of prototyping in a loose sense sometimes. Is anyone familiar with this book and this guy, Don Norman? Yeah, it's very useful, very amazing book. If you're designing stuff for people, which most of us are, I think, extraordinary thing to read. It really helped me kind of reframe and focus on what it means to like make stuff for people, whether it's software or teapots. Really helps give you like the tools and the vocabulary to talk about things. We will touch on some of the vocab and some of the concepts there, but this is kind of more about process, about how you go about choosing what to make and how you make it. So yeah, just for some context around Make It, what we're doing. Make It is a company about making music tools for the 99% of people who maybe don't have music education or are just getting started with music. We kind of want to make music accessible to as many people as possible, people and fans of music who've like not made music before, because opening up Ableton or Pro Tools or sitting down with a violin for the first time is a bit of a daunting experience, and it can maybe put people off. And so that's kind of the whole thesis around Make in general, is about lowering the barrier to entry and making music kind of more inclusive. And anyone who wants to get involved in music can and should get involved. So in 2021, the original Make app hits the App Store. It's an app. It's kind of like a social media app with like a DAW inside it. So you're making songs and recording audio and like sharing them on a feed. And you can see the Make app is just over here. This is like our feed, and people are picking a fun visual and sharing it. It's kind of like a TikTok style feed. We've got like a DAW that's powered by traction in the studio, and it kind of focuses on allowing people to add vocals on top of instrumentals that we kind of give them, and like we've got like a good vocal chain with lots of plugins, and we create the visuals for social distribution and kind of focus on like helping people just use their voice and make themselves sound as good as they can. So what we found is that the people who people who can sing and the people who want to make music with singing, they're different sets of people, and there's just a bunch of challenges around what it means to like be in this space. So there were a bunch of challenges that we had. So we had a lot of people in the Make app creating songs and having a lot of fun, and we have lots of songs in the Make app. But what we found is like getting people's friends to listen to their songs is a bit tricky, and it's hard to get people to be able to feel comfortable recording music anywhere. You can't really do it on the train in noisy environments. It's not particularly straightforward to do. So we're kind of wanting to aim a bit higher. We want to access that superset of people who want to make music with vocals and singing and all that kind of thing, but they don't currently have like the means, or they don't feel comfortable singing yet. And so like late last year, about this time last year, we're starting to see, other tools and technologies come out. Like we saw, like, anyone remember Lensa? Anyone remember Lensa? It was like a thing where you'd like upload a few photos of yourself and it would like make this fun avatar of you. And we're kind of seeing a few of these tools come out where it's like, it's using some AI technologies to help people be creative. And it's like kind of crossing that uncanny valley that I think tools weren't necessarily before. So I think we're starting to feel good about some of these technologies that are coming out that are really going to help people. How can we integrate that into workflows for music and music with singing? We'd seen like the appetite for AI in music kind of start to bubble up. So I think that's like an exciting thing in general. So we started to explore different technologies. So our team is kind of based remotely, kind of across the globe. Some of us are in the US, some of us in Europe. And we thought, okay, we're going to get like a little crack team of engineers and product people to all just get in the same room and like figure out some kind of experience around trying to make it easier to create music with singing, but without necessarily needing to sing. So we start kind of kicking the tires of different technologies that are available to us. We start looking at like stable diffusion-based outputs, like using like spectrograms, and that's kind of fun. So we can, you can end up generating stuff like this. Kind of fun. There's some vocals in there, kind of, but it's not very. You can't hear what's going on there. I'll play that again just so. Very fun. Can we build an experience around that people feel is expressive, and we're like, okay, well, maybe that kind of thing would happen. And then there's this technology called Tortoise TTS, but it's more for speech. One of my colleagues, they used ChatGPT to write the lyrics. Who else would write lyrics in 2022 and 2023, obviously? But you'll hear it's kind of more for speech. This is a song that they wrote about like Hogwarts, maybe because I'm British. I think maybe I've got stereotyped. There's a song about meeting a girl in Hogwarts. It's just the audio of the voice.
I'm in the castle with a plan to find a girl who's a big fan of magic spells and potions too. I want a girl who's just like you.
So it's not really singing. So we're like, well, that's kind of close, but it's not really what we were looking for. But we'd already been using this technology called tachotron, which is a type of voice synthesis where you'll kind of just give it lots of audio of an example singer, and it will kind of like figure out how they speak, and you'll just give it text and it'll just give you chunks of audio back. So if you give it audio of someone singing, like for the training data, it'll generally give you like something that's kind of singy-ish back. And so we already had this in the Make app for people were starting to use that. And so we're like, well, maybe we could explore that. And like, we've got this beat library in the Make app. How can we combine these pieces? So this is like slightly the towards the final version, but you'll get an impression of like where we started to get excited around this kind of tech.
I swipe right, hope so high, but then I got a dreaded replay. Sorry, not interested was all she wrote. My head was crushing, I couldn't cope to the rejection. Got so deep to the rejection, I can't sleep. Why do I even try? It's dating have to the rejection. So try.
Okay, you're right. It's kind of fun. So that is a kind of a Wizard of Oz style production. We kind of had this sense of like how like an algorithm for this kind of could work. We've got a ChatGPT. We've got we've got Python libraries like MadMum and Librosa to analyze the beat. We can do autotune and other DSP stuff, and we can kind of pull it all together. So that's what that is. And we're sat there in our little Airbnb all together, and we were all like, that's quite fun. No, thank you, Drake. Thank you, Drake. So we're like, we think this is fun. And we kind of like had a sense of like what the technology would be for this. You think it would be tenable to kind of get done in this little week we have together? And we kind of have this sense that other people are going to like it. We think this is fun. Like how about, surely other people are going to resonate with this type of experience. So we should, start building it. Let's, just, to make some stuff. And then my colleague and friend Nir, he's a really smart guy. He says, wait, why are we going to build it right now when we don't know who cares about this yet? And that was the moment I was like, okay, that's a really good point. Well, I think it's cool, but maybe surely, we kind of trust our instincts about this sort of thing. And he raised the point that we've got this short period of time and we don't know if this is necessarily going to be the thing. It's how much is people going to actually resonate with this. So he was like, well, we can start to validate this experience and this output on, for example, showing it to people using social media and just kind of like gauging the reaction for people if people think this is like an interesting thing. And for me, that was a real aha moment just in general, because I was like an engineer and I like making stuff. I like cool tech. And this was a moment of reflection where I was like, oh, before you build a thing, like you don't have to just follow your own instinct whether you think it's cool. You can reach out and like kind of use kind of the neural network of other people and the way that they kind of interact to kind of gauge if this is like a compelling experience. And I was like, oh, wow, that's really smart. And so we start validating whether we think this is an interesting experience using social media. And we do a bunch of things, but posting it on like TikTok and it gets a bunch of views. And we kind of iterate on the format. We ended up adding the video. That wasn't something we had at the start. And the real-time lyrics, that kind of made a difference because there wasn't, without the lyrics, it's like sometimes the models can be a bit hard to understand. So yeah, one of the things we did, we kind of all sat there. We kind of got our coffees ready, and we got my friend Nir. He's like, he's a pretty cool dude. He's got some Twitter followers, X followers, and he kind of posted up this. He's kind of inviting people to like, give some prompts for our tech that we've definitely made and we aren't faking in the background. And people start like throwing in some ideas, and there's like loads and loads of responses. These are some fun ones. Drake singing about how amazing he is at playing bocce ball. Good stuff. And we like, use ChatGPT, generate the lyrics, we get all the output from the Tacotron model, and we paste it into Ableton and auto-tune it, and we're trying to crank these out just to show people what the output's like. And people resonate with it. People wanted to keep doing this, and the output on other social media platforms seems to like people be resonating with it. And so we were like, okay, this is like enough of an indication that maybe this is interesting. And so then we were like, okay, we can start building things. And then, so this is kind of just like another lesson about prototyping in general. We started like on a lo-fi prototype in Python, and it was just running off like a single machine. And we kind of accumulated like a little bit of tech debt a little bit too early. And so just as a kind of aside here, try and build towards the, try and future-proof your decisions, because when I built the first version of this, I did not. So try and future-proof your decisions. And yeah, we eventually moved it over to using Flask, which is a Python REST API flavored thing, using Cloud Run, and that works really well. Great. So, and then so like the main kind of crux of this, and kind of like really starting to like integrate this validation into like our process. So we kind of had this bar of like our Wizard of Oz output, and the way it resonated with people as a kind of like litmus test for is our generated output as good. And so that was really useful because we now kind of had like a test, and like it's kind of like a little system. So if this hits just as well as this, then we've kind of done our job, and the engineering's, I don't want to say done necessarily, but it's getting there. And so there were some moments where the system wouldn't work as well, and I'll play you this because I think it's very funny. It doesn't sound great, but I think it's really funny.
I hear a knock on my door. It was the mailman coming back for more. I was hoping it was a package for me, but I guess it's just a we miss you card. We missed you, we missed you. Was there something that I should do? Something that should not have done? Something that
I'll spare you the rest of it, but it really just does go on. And the first time we got one of these, we still don't know what causes that. But the first time we got one of those, everyone was just cracking up in the office. It was just great. And we were, like, to a certain extent, we were like, well, it's actually quite fun when you get those. It's really funny. I never got one of those and not smiled and cracked up. So I don't know. That was a fun little thing. But yeah, there was definitely some other challenges around like making sure that one of the big problems we had. Has anyone used like Mad Mum and Librosa and those kind of Python libraries to do like song and out, like MIR stuff? They're pretty good, but they're kind of like a little bit opaque. And when you're trying to, if you are in Ableton, you're a human being, you can like, see the grid lines and you can drop the thing in, the tempo. If the tempo is slightly wrong, you can just fix it. And so navigating some of those problems was a bit of a problem. We were able to kind of get around it in that way, in some way, because if there was some inaccuracy, like with rap music, it was, maybe someone would just have a late delivery or something like that, and it was kind of, you get around it. A little bit wonky still, but it was still fun. Thank you, Drake. Thank you. So yeah, then we end up building the web app, which we accumulated tech debt for and had to rewrite. So build for the future. Lesson learned twice there. And yeah, people are starting to use it. And we're sending it around the office, and people at the office are like sending it to their friends, and we're kind of seeing on the Google Analytics. I was like, wait, does anyone know anyone in South Korea? And we're like, no. It's like, oh, it's blowing up in South Korea. We don't know anyone in South Korea. And we're like, oh, this thing's really virally spreading. We're like, oh, that's interesting. And And then all of a sudden, within about 2 weeks, we'd made more Drakes than we had on the Make app, than we had Makes in the Make app. And the Make app had been going for like a year and a half. And so we were like, oh, this as a format of creation, people like. And so in that way, we could have met our objective at that point. We were like, are there other ways that people want to interact with creating singing music? And the answer is the texty music thing, apparently compelling. So that's something that we figured out. This is some of the press that we got, which I was quite pleased with. We were on Fox Philadelphia at one point. We were featured on Complex. The Complex logo is just out of view. But we're kind of able to have this like kind of social impact. And I don't think we would have had this kind of social impact if it wasn't for the validation that we went through initially. And maybe we would have. But without those like extra little tuning of what is the product, who is it for, how does it feel, and seeing if people like resonate with the output, I don't know if this would happen. And obviously there's this element of, there's a, an influential person at the center of it. And so it's like a meme drop. So that kind of helps towards it as well. Something that I found just bizarre is that like other random people would just be like making TikToks about it. And that just like blew my mind. It was very strange. And people on Reddit, and like, this is the thing that I really love to see, is just strangers on Reddit. There was like this Reddit thread that was like, hundreds of comments long. People just sharing their Drakes and just having fun. And I was like, that was exactly what we're going for. That is the kind of joy and the kind of fun that I think we're kind of aiming for. So anyone having fun, making music. And I was like, whenever I read through that, I'm like, that's the kind of high that I think I'm chasing. I think we as a team are chasing now, is like helping people bond and have fun with music. Obviously it's like a fun meme drop. This is not like a product that you could continue to make. It's a fun, funky thing. But we eventually took Drake down after like a few weeks. We took away a lot from Drake. And so obviously it's just a fun meme drop. And so we're thinking, okay, we have all these lessons that we've taken from Drake. What's next? How can we help more people? Can we use this process again? And the answer is, I don't know if this is the right slide. No, reflections first. Okay, so kind of wrapping up these thoughts. So for me, it's about, we started off with having a hypothesis. We were like, this kind of thing, this technology might be interesting. You kind of have to start somewhere. I think with any like scientific thing, you kind of have to have this like creative little moment of like, what if, but maybe, and then you start testing that. And then we start testing our hypothesis, iterate, and then we put it out in the world and test it out, add the video, add the lyrics, and change the output, add the auto-tune, whatever it may be, iterate from it, and then build. Or if it doesn't work, and there are some other ideas that we tried out, just don't do them. You don't have to pursue everything you do. But something I wanted to touch on as well is this balance. Because not everything you build necessarily has to be, a viral this or a viral that. I got David there because, if you have a vision for something, you don't need a focus group to tell you what to do. There was no focus groups involved in the sculpting of, the Mona Lisa or David or anything like that. So I think something that's worth bearing in mind is this isn't, cut and paste for every scenario, for every project. But I think it helps me to be aware about where I want to sit on this kind of spectrum between vision and validation, and like just making sure I'm being deliberate about how the team is like choosing how to think about and choosing what to work on. So then we're like, okay, what's next? Can we repeat this process? And so that's when we had the idea for covers. And covers is an experience where you can, show of hands, have anyone seen like the AI covers online, like the Trump singing Mariah Carey or the whoever else? And yeah, it's, so we were kind of, a few months ago, we were like, that was kind of just starting to really kind of, the technology, the open source stuff was starting to come out. And we're like, okay, that's really fun. Like, can we build an experience on that? And turns out you can. We go through, we have this hypothesis about, do people want to interact with this? We think it's kind of fun. It seems interesting. The output's okay. The output's since got very good, even over the few months. And so we start generating output with a video, and we post it on Twitter and TikTok. And we're seeing these ones really do well on social media. Like, you see insert singer here, singing insert song here. And if it's like some certain demographic of people, it's like they think, wow, this is just amazing. And they share it and it's funny. So we're like, okay, there's a desire to want to make this kind of things. And so we start building it, and then we release it. And we were also like starting to have experiences where you can make your own voice, like train your own voice, and people really love that. We've had lots of people on the covers site, like training their own voice, and there's a big appetite for that. So just to round off, this is something that we've done twice now. It's something that we're doing for future projects and projects I'm working on now. And yeah, as I say, this is kind of a reminder to myself about what is the right way, or just like a framework for thinking about how you should go about building different things. And we've got more projects to come. So know where you want to be on the vision versus validation spectrum. So for example, anyone here, excited about Rust? We all like a little bit. Okay, maybe it's just me and that. I don't know. But people are excited about different technologies, and I like technology. I'm like, oh my god, what if I wrote a DAW engine in Rust, and like maybe that's going to be like a whole great thing. Rewrite traction in Rust. That'd be really fun. And then this side of me says, okay, that's great. But who are you building? Are you building it for you to learn? Are you building it for, who are you building it for? And there's no right or wrong answer there. You can build anything for any reason. But I think part of me thinks, oh my God, people are going to love that. There's a DAW in Rust. It's going to sound even better. Floating point numbers sound better when they're added together with Rust, obviously. So it's just being deliberate about how you're building it, what you're building, and just knowing why you're doing stuff. So I think that's the thrust, generally, of what I've learned, what the team has learned at Make in the last year or so. If there's any questions, I'd love to hear them out.
I have kind of a practical question. For all these AI projects, did you have to approach the artist before you use their voice, or how did it go normally for you?
Yeah, so the licensing thing is an interesting question, and slightly outside the scope of like what I'm interested in. Obviously we had no idea that the Drake project was going to be as big as it was. It was just supposed to be like a proof of concept mean thing. Those reasons it can't really continue for that reason. But yeah, all the stuff we're doing now is, we're trying to make sure everyone's feeling good about, IP and all the license holders and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's a really important consideration.
Thanks very much. I wondered if you could speak a little bit more about when you say build for the future. Could you talk about that process and how you approach it? Because obviously you say you had 2 builds that you kind of had to...
And this is something I've started to develop other thoughts about. So at the time, I was also very much like learning different backend technologies and like how do you build stuff, and that was kind of my first foray into things. So I guess there's the 2 approaches that I think about. It's build for the future, and or build it fast, build it terribly, throw it away, rebuild it with the learnings that you had. And I guess that's kind of what we did. But I guess there was just kind of the heartache of not having that conceptualization ahead of time. We were like, oh my God, this thing is not working. We're trying to fix it. And it's like, okay, we just need to just throw this away. And so if you can, build for the future. If you've explored the technologies enough, build for the future. For example, our web app. That's definitely one that we could have built for the future, but we just didn't, just trying to just get it done. So the web app, has anyone done any web stuff here before? I know everyone's a C++ person. So there's this framework called React, which is like Facebook made or Meta made back in the day. And it's, a JavaScript framework for making websites. And what was really important for Drake and for all our experiences is that we have these nice social media sharing cards. So when you paste it in your WhatsApp group, it'll say, a song about XYZ by insert voice here, on that kind of thing. But with React, you don't get that out the box. You have to have this extra layer of like server-side rendering, so the HTML happens before the JavaScript and all that kind of thing. And so we're here with a React app that works great, and we realize, this needs to be, some other framework like Next.js or whatever it may be, some other framework that supports server-side rendering. And we kind of had to that was a big pain point. We could have just built it with that from the start and avoided all the heartache. It's like not straightforward to just convert them, at least the way we built it. I'm sure other web ninjas would know how to do that in a way that wasn't as complicated or as difficult as the way we did it. But yeah, that was a learning for me, for sure.
Thanks for the talk. I wanted to ask you a little bit about any challenges you faced in kind of scaling the model in production, right? Because you kind of said we put it out there and suddenly people started using it. Did you kind of have any challenges or strategies that you developed in scaling the machine learning model to work with more users, right?
Yes.
Can you talk at all about your experience
absolutely.
there?
Absolutely. So the two projects, they have different architectures. For the Drake one, there were some other third parties that were able to, they were doing some of the inference stuff for the voice conversion. The rest of it was other backends that we'd written in Cloud Run. So they were kind of auto scaling and that kind of thing. And it's when it comes to covers, that's where that no one had these models hosted anywhere, any third parties. So we were like, okay, well, we can figure this out. We'll spin up a little GK, some Kubernetes cluster, and we'll manage this whole thing. And it turns out it's pretty complicated, really hard. So there's this other company called Replicate now, and they have this nice, it's like a Docker style thing. So we've been using Replicate for a bunch of the inference and even the training for some stuff.
Hey, thanks. I was just wondering, could you tell us a little bit more about the model training, how much resource that's required, investments you had to make in that and so on? Just give us a bit of background if you can.
Yeah, so for covers, the model training is, so currently the workflow is people record about I think it's 3 minutes at the moment of audio, and that will go off to our backend. And we have a third-party vendor that will. It's like a Docker style containerization for the training, and so we'll be like, hey, here's all the audio. Can you go ahead and process that? And it's kind of this stateless container. So we'll put in all the audio, and then it'll use T3s or whatever it may be to do the core training. It takes maybe half an hour to get a voice trained for our production.
You can train a model for every user?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Jamie, thanks for the talk. In terms of validation, the idea, have you identified some indicator that an idea is not happening very well? Or at what stage should we throw the idea away and go for a pivot or something like that?
It's a great question. And I think it's... it depends on what your goals are. For example, there are some ideas that never really made it out of the internal team vibe check, the stable diffusion for audio thing. I was like, it's cool. We can I could see it doing something, but it's just so some didn't quite make it out the vibe check. And maybe you'll see you're posted on insert social media platform here, and you'll see it gets 2 views, no comments. Consistently 2 views, no comments. And it'll be like, okay, this output doesn't resonate with people. Or, you'll show it to, maybe you did a focus group. We didn't do any focus groups. Maybe you do a focus group. And people, you can just feel the room being like, oh, that's cool. And you're like, okay, this is not the one. So I think it's about listening to your internal compass about and kind of just reading the room about, do people find this interesting?
Thanks for the talk, Jamie. Very interesting, and not quite what I expected, which is good. A reflection, I don't know if it's a question, is something I really liked, and I think I'm taking away from this talk, is the idea of when you're testing out if people like something, it's kind of part of the validation thing, is to do something as quickly and cheaply as possible to prove the idea. So some kind of smoke and mirrors type experience. And I'm even thinking, okay, if you've got an idea for a plugin, for example, just put it together in some kind of prototyping environment just to create some audio examples, post up an example on social media with a fake UI, that sort of thing. And it's really getting me thinking about.
Yeah, and that's exactly kind of, I think, who this talk is, one of the people who this talk is for, really, plugin developers, you've got this sick idea, you've got this cool tech that you've made, it's making this really sick noise, but it has all these parameters maybe, and you're like, I think this is great. I want 1,000 parameters, but most people, they want a knob or no knobs, 2 knobs, whatever it may be. And just experimenting with ways of packaging your tech. If I guess that's the vision versus validation. You have the vision that this sound is the thing, but what's the UI? Maybe that's something that you want to validate. So I think that's absolutely a great use case for this kind of framework.
I know that the licensing part is not what you're interested in, but I'm wondering what you're doing in terms of licensing for training sets, because I think the legal side of that hasn't really been worked out. So obviously you've got the voices on the output, but when you're feeding it music to start creating the tracks, do you have to deal with that yet?
So about the track, sorry?
Yeah, when you're training to generate the music, not with the voices.
So the actual music itself, we already have a library that we own.
Okay, all right. So you're not generating any of the music?
Not yet,
okay.
no. I mean, we're interested in that, but yeah, for sure.
My question is about the sticking power of some of these creative processes.
That's a great question, yeah.
So I think for a lot of musicians who have a lot of experience, often the process itself is part of the contribution to that sticking power. But with folks who don't have as much experience, where does that kind of come from? Does it come from the outcome itself, the result, or is the process part of the fun as well?
I think what makes this compelling for people to come back to, or at least to make it somewhat retaining, as the people would say, I think it's in that social interaction for the consumers. So it's you receive in your inbox, your mate has just sent you a song about, you're an idiot, but I love you, or something, and you're like, wait, you're an idiot, but I love you. And you send them a thing back, and you're back and forth and back and forth. And so I think for the consumer music things, what I've felt, and I think what we've kind of figured out as a team, is that it's kind of about those social interactions. They really make a difference. Because it's about why are you making music? And I think a lot of us here, we're maybe musicians and we love music and or audio in general. So we kind of have a clear sense of why we're making music. We have this kind of, maybe we're artists, or maybe we're want to help artists. But if you're my mum, for example, she doesn't want to make music. She's not really interested, but she does want to make a Drake, or she does want to make a short little song about whatever. And because she wants to send it to her mates or to me or to whoever. So I think music is really about communication, at least for people who are just regular people, not weirdos like us. So I think it's about the communication between people, basically, yeah.
We have a couple of questions from Discord. So the first question comes from Anthony saying, how expensive was running the Drake equipment, and did you monetize it?
Yeah. So covers we're monetizing now. So if you guys want to create your own voice, train your own model, so you want to make a Jamie model and it wants to want to sing Mariah Carey, you want to sing not Mariah Carey, you want to sing stuff, then you can. And also, yeah, we've kind of got a subscription, so you can kind of like make unlimited covers now. You kind of select the voice and upload your audio, and away you go. So yeah, but the training, but it's working out the trade-offs between monetization and cost has definitely been a process. So yeah, we kind of started the Make app originally. It was reasonably a cheap thing to run, like infrastructure-wise. It was the database, that's something, and like the storage, that's something. But all the compute was happening on the user's device. And then as we started doing this experience, the compute's happening on our computers, and you have to pay for that, especially with, T4s or A100s attached to them. There was definitely a process to figure out what the right balance is, and I think we're always trying to learn more about that.
Nice. And finally, a question from Savik asking, thanks for the talk. How long do you roughly spend on creating each prototype? And are there any reusable components in consecutive projects?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think as little time as possible, I think is the answer to the question. So if you want to, make a prototype, you want to get it out the door, validate as quickly as possible. At least that's what we've been doing. What's the second part of the question, sorry?
Did you build any reusable components for consecutive projects?
So there are parts that we've reused. For example, like the web libraries, like buttons and components and layouts and CSS and that kind of thing. As we've kind of iterated towards what the right backend for the system was, we've been able to reuse more this is all like Node backend, so there's more TypeScript that we can reuse and that kind of thing. But yeah, having stuff that you can use, like a library of stuff, whether it's the front end, the back end, or whatever, that tool set is going to help you build prototypes faster. So keeping adding to that, and that's probably a very helpful thing to do as a team.
Very nice. So I think we're out of time now. So thank you all for coming, and let's give a massive thank you to Jamie for an exceptionally inspiring talk.